Hey everyone. In today's episode, we're going through the property clock for the last quarter. Now, it's one of the most popular episodes consistently on my channel. So, in today's episode, if people that haven't seen this before, we're going to go through a few things. First of all, the definition of the property clock. Secondly, the stages of the property clock. Thirdly, the cities in analysis. Fourthly, the property clock for each city. And then finally, the overview of the property clock. Look, pretty simply speaking, what the property clock is it's just the use of the clock, so the standard analog clock, to identify which stage of the market cycle each market is at. So simply speaking, there's a few stages of this. Firstly, we've got the downturn stage. Secondly, the stabilization stage. Thirdly, the upturn stage. And finally, the boom stage with the winner's curse in it towards the back end of it. Look, this is what it basically looks like in terms of the clock. So there's your 12 to 12, should I say, standard analog clock. 12 to 3 there is your downturn. 3 to 6 then is your stabilization phase. 6 to 9 is your upturn phase. And then 9 to 12 is your boom phase, with 11 to 12 being your winner's curse phase within the boom phase. So I'll actually just define each of these sort of stages now. So the downturn's characterized by quite a few things. So first of all, the market's generally quite overpriced. It's outperformed its long-term average. Because of that, consumer sentiment then drops. Demand to supply then decreases, the ratio of that. The days on market increase and prices start to decrease, which generally only lasts 1 to 2 years at maximum. The stabilization phase is where the market downturn starts to stabilize and prices become more affordable for the general market. Demand to supply ratios level off with consumer sentiment. So it's not too expensive for everyone, it's too cheap for everyone, it just levels off. It's pretty even. And due to that, days on market level out to long-term averages. So you might have a market that has, let's say, an average of 40 days on market. It will probably be something around that in a stabilization phase after it's gone through a downturn. That's generally what happens, and it kind of stays there for a little while. And as I said, I say it can stay there for a little while, it can last for long periods. So up to 10 years, depending on the market. Look, a good example of a market that can last for a long time is somewhere like Perth. So when Perth does go through some crazy periods of growth, and then it does go through a downturn as well. But when it stabilizes, it can stabilize for, I kid you not, like 10 years, literally. Whereas some other markets, for example, are a lot, should I say, more consistent performers. So, I mean, a lot of the East Coast markets are more consistent performers. So, Perth, as I said, Perth's an example of one that can stabilize for a long period of time. The upturn is where prices become more affordable for most of the market. Due to this, consumer sentiment begins to increase as it's been below its long-term average for a long time. So what that is it's because it's been so low for so long, it breaks the trend line, and because you break the trend line, more people pile in than normal because more people have been out of the market for longer because it's basically overcompensated and then undercompensated. That's just what happens in the market. Due to this, the days on market begin to fall, prices then start to increase, and it generally only lasts for 2 to 4 years, this upturn phase. Look, the boom phase is where the market becomes affordable and or accessible for most of the market. Consumer sentiment is strong, so it's often when you'll see the news go on about it, talk about it nearly every day. That's kind of when you're really in the boom phase. Demand to supply is extremely strong, and then because of that, days on market fall drastically and prices start to substantially increase. Generally, this will only last from 1 to 2 years, so it doesn't last for that long in general, the boom phase. And the final part of the boom phase is the winner's curse phase of the market. So what that really is the winner's curse phase is where consumers become euphoric and feel as though the market cannot go down. And because of that, everyone FOMOs into the market regardless of their situation. They don't think properly, they just throw in offers like crazy. Days on market are at their lowest, so they are generally close to their record levels. Demand to supply is at its highest, so you got most people, the highest demand to supply, so the most people looking, very low stock on market. That's what happens. And due to that, price guides are slashed and the market becomes in overdrive. So this is generally only quite short in nature as well, so only generally 6 to 12 months. Winner's curse phase, really, it's not only the prices that get slashed, it's also the terms. So I think in a winner's curse phase of a market would be every offer basically coming in unconditional. And even if it's an auction market, you'll have people throwing ridiculous unconditional offers before auction and that kind of thing. That's very common in a winner's curse phase of a market. So look out for something like that. That's basically your final stage of the market cycle. So that is your winner's curse phase within the boom. So look, I'm just now going to start and get into a few cities. The main cities I'll be getting into here will be, first of all, the primary cities. So that will be Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth. I'll actually break down the different regions of them for everyone as well. Newcastle, Geelong, Central Coast, and Wollongong. So they'll also be included, but they're more regional centres, so I can't break down regions of them, but they're primary cities. Then I'll get into also include the secondary cities. So that's the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Adelaide, and Hobart. So that's where we're going to get with that. So look, just to touch on where we're kind of at the moment, presently we'll start with Sydney. So Sydney in July kind of looked like this. We're well into the probably midpoint of the stabilisation phase for a lot of areas. Obviously, the market was turning a little bit, doing a little bit differently. I think everyone following my content would have realised that. So where we're at really today is to compare it from July, as you can see here, to today. You can see quite clearly that a few of the markets have shifted. So you can I can see right here alone, you can see that, the Sutherland Shire and Inner West has definitely picked up a bit. Look, North Shore Eastern Suburbs pretty similar. Northern Beaches, you could probably argue a pretty similar kind of location as well. The reason why the Inner West and Sutherland Shire have picked up, there's a few reasons. So first things first, the Inner West particularly is because of all the transport plans, all the 5% deposit schemes, and the various things that we've got going on. That's one of the main reasons. So there are still some parts of the Inner West and should I say Inner Southwest as well, you could probably include it in that actually are around the 1.5 million. You can pick up sometimes tiny, shitty miners cottages for that kind of mark and still get in. And even the people buying the townhouses and units which are underlying the market are becoming quite popular. And it's because of all the transport in the area and the price point. The reason the Shire has picked up is because it's quite a good lifestyle area, and 1.5 million as well still is well achievable. And you have quite a few people who are professionals starting to move down there who want a coastal lifestyle. And look, I went to school down there, so I know this. So that's the reason that's picked up quite a bit as well. And for what you get, and for Sydney prices, it's actually quite well priced. So it's starting to move quite a bit. North Shore and Eastern Suburbs is still there's been some record breaking sales there, don't get me wrong, but the overall market is slowly starting to turn. It's probably still where it was, I'd say, a couple of months ago. But it's you get the right property still getting good numbers. Northern Beaches, Inner South St George, I'd say are in a decent stead. Like, you're getting some good sales there, nothing overly record breaking, but some solid sales. So it's definitely in the stabilisation phase as well. So look, that's an overview basically of the Sydney market and where everything's at in terms of Sydney. Market's definitely starting to move, and it's only going to continue as time goes on as well. Look, let's get into Melbourne. It's obviously, as everyone knows, it's my number one draft pick in the country. Melbourne in July did look like this. So pretty much everything was sitting around the 6 o'clock mark or so. Obviously, some, such as the Inner West, Inner City, Inner East, Southeast, had already, in my opinion, broken that 6 o'clock mark. And obviously the Inner North and Bayside very close to it. But where we are today is here. So what's basically happened here is everything back from July to now is either at or just past the 6 o'clock mark. Now, first things first, you'll notice the Bayside there is still a touch right on that 6 o'clock mark. And the reason for that is because the Bayside actually in COVID did go up, probably more than anywhere else in pretty much Melbourne. You could argue Mornington too, but this isn't about Mornington. I'm talking Bayside, inner suburbs. So that's the thing about the Bayside. It is still probably not as far along. The Inner West and Inner City, I'll tell you right now, some parts of them are rocketing along. They are starting to sell quite a lot. Not only a lot, but it's also the prices that they're tending to get. I had a client in a Yarraville who picked one up a few months ago for literally 990,000 near the village. Really good. They got 750 a week for it as well. Really good home in that. I mean, if that was to go to market today, one just down the road sold for 1.27 to give you an idea. So the market's already moving, definitely in that sense in Melbourne. And that's only really going to continue to be straight with everyone. If we look at the inner east / southeast, eastern suburbs, and inner north, they're all in a fairly similar location. They all past the 6 o'clock mark now as well. That is going to continue. I have a feeling, particularly the inner north may have a bit of a jump in the coming weeks, particularly around the affordable pockets. So some parts towards Brunswick, some parts towards probably Pascoe Vale, especially Heidelberg Heights, Heidelberg West. I think that's gonna start to tick up, because don't get me wrong, it does have a stigma about it, no doubt. But to be within 12, 13K of the CBD, and pick them up for around 850 to 950K is pretty good. Especially if you're in one of the better pockets near Ivanhoe there. If you're in any of those that are within a couple hundred meters to Ivanhoe, you're probably going to do pretty well near the hospitals, because that area as well has a lot of government backing going into it. So that's probably another thing to go on. But look, that's Melbourne today, and that's really what's kind of going on in the Melbourne market at the moment, to be straight with everyone. Let's get into Brisbane. So Brisbane in July kind of looked like this. So it was well into its boom phase, sort of going towards the mid part of its boom phase, I'd say, moving towards that. You had some clear laggers such as the inner east and inner north, but where Brisbane really is today is it is significantly moved, and you'll see just the change up here. We are well into the boom phase now. It's starting to look a little bit frothy in a lot of locations. Inner east and inner north still do have more to go, don't get me wrong, but particularly inner west, inner city, inner south, I think they're very close to their, should I say, winner's curse phase. Some of those markets have done more than 100% growth since 2019. So that's only in the last 6 years, to give you an idea. So I do think they're getting a little bit frothy, some of these markets. The best by far is the inner north, inner east. So, to give some people some examples, some parts of even Woolloongabba and East Brisbane you're picking up for $700,000. No kidding, in 2019 and before that. Some of those areas now are $1.6 to $1.7 million. Now, I'm not saying it can't pick up more. It probably will, because of the scheme for probably the foreseeable 12 months, no doubt. But they're definitely looking a little bit frothy, because they can't really go up too much more than that in the course of the cycle. It's just how markets run. They generally run in cycles. So just keep an eye on that. For those wanting to buy in Brisbane and have to live there, and especially if you have the money, my suggestion is inner north and inner east of Brisbane. They're the long-term money locations. The inner north, the older money locations of Brisbane. Your inner east is more so the newer money locations of Brisbane, mostly with good schools, very tightly held. A lot of families live there, especially in your better streets of the suburbs. So those locations are going to do quite well. Mind you, there are still some there as well who I think will have 30% plus growth to go. It's not all suburbs, but make sure they're fundamentally the right ones. So that's where we are with Brisbane really today. Let's just get into Perth. So look, when I last did my last Perth episode, which was not Perth, but the property clock for Perth, it was in July. So this is where we were kind of sitting at. We're getting very close to the winner's curse phase overall. Clearly the Fremantle, Rockingham and Mandurah locations were in the winner's curse phase. Inner city and south also getting towards that. Joondalup, inner east, city beaches area. That should say inner west, pardon me. That area should say was kind of still in the boom phase with more to go. Fundamentally, the reason for that was because that area is kind of where a lot of your longer term residents are. A lot of your jobs are there. For example, the city, Osborne Park, Joondalup, all really large employment locations. So they're pretty much all between that, all around there. So that's the reason they had more to go. But today where we're at really is here. So you can see, in essence, really, you can see that, both Fremantle and Mandurah. Fremantle's kind of moved a bit. Rockingham and Mandurah's sort of still where it is. It's probably still got a little bit to go. Probably for the foreseeable, similar to parts of Brisbane, probably 12 months, I'd say, or so. but Fremantle's moved a little bit. I mean, the inner city and south is definitely in the winner's curse phase, and Joondalup and inner east and slash west and city beaches is also, I'd say, getting towards the winner's curse phase. They've just gone up so much. I mean, some of these areas, like especially Rocking and Mandurah, like some of them are going up like 120% to give you an idea, which is just insane. I mean, Joondalup, inner east and city beaches, they'll have more to go. I do expect them, if you look at suburbs that haven't doubled, I do expect pretty much most suburbs there to double by the end of the cycle. So there is still a little bit to go there. Mind you, I should just put an exclamation point in saying this. I do know a lot of Perth people don't like me talking about this, that the market's sort of more towards its end. There's no ill intentions with that. But what I will say as well is, I mean, a lot of these, should I say, Perth markets too, I don't mean it in any bad way, but I mean, there will be some suburbs that will continue to grow here, particularly ones in the older, should I say, estates, more affluent locations are very tightly held by owner-occupiers. So what you'll see, I'm expecting, is when the next market cycle sort of, should I say, has a downturn, I'm expecting some of these suburbs just to literally stabilise and others to be very shot. And for Perth residents, you'll know what I mean when I say this. I'm talking about those suburbs where you've generally got a lot of FIFO workers, a lot of short-term sort of workers or industries that can flip quite quickly. You don't want to be buying these locations. Some are perfectly fine that are around particularly Joondalup and inner east city beaches area. But your exurbs full of these FIFO workers, I'd be quite worried if you're buying there right now. So just avoid them. They are in Rocking and Mandurah, and there are some in some outer suburbs that I'm not mentioning here as well. So just keep in mind of that. That's Perth anyway. Look, to get into all the primary cities, so to add the primary cities here, we'll add Geelong, Newcastle, Central Coast, and Wollongong. These are all regions, so I can't break down different parts of them. Look, maybe in 5-10 years, Newcastle may be its own region, and probably even the Central Coast too, because they are growing a lot. Geelong is as well. But this is where they were all kind of at in July. So Geelong had broken the 6 o'clock mark, in my opinion. Newcastle had, it was very close to breaking the 6. Central Coast was already at the 5, and Wollongong was kind of still a bit lagging, the midpoint of its market, should I say, stabilisation phase. And you can see Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane and Perth there as well. But where we really are today is on an aggregated level. Just to go through the cities I've already been, Sydney's obviously moved a little bit. I mean, Sydney's now really, I'd say, with right towards the back end of its sort of stabilisation phase. Melbourne's obviously past the 6 o'clock mark, as I said it would be. Brisbane's obviously getting towards the winner's curse phase, and Perth is already within its winner's curse phase, well within it now. But the big one I want to mention here is, of my other primary cities, is Geelong. And I said to a lot of people, things like this can happen. They can jump ship and move around quite a bit over the course of things. So Geelong was actually behind Melbourne in terms of the property clock beforehand, in terms of right at the 6 o'clock mark. And I mean, if you had a bought in July, and I do have clients who did, you got in at the absolute perfect moment. It was probably even more perfect at the start of the year, but you got in at the perfect moment before it really turned and you started to have all the people throwing unconditional, ridiculous offers at things. So for those people who did that, and I know some of you guys are watching, congratulations, you've made probably 5 to 10% within a couple of months, which is insane. But just look at where Geelong is today to give you an idea. So Geelong's actually now jumped Melbourne in terms of where it is in the property clock. So the reason for this is because I've had plenty of agents calling me, asking me what's been going on, just having a chat because I get along well with them. And they've asked me, what do you value at this? And they're telling me what they're selling for. So I had an agent a couple of weeks ago call me, and she was asking me, how are you going, all that. And I said, oh, yeah, good. She goes, what would you value this place? And I said, look, 630, but I'll try to get it for around 620 because that's what my clients would pay me. And I want to at least make them their money back and get them a good deal. And she said, cool. And she asked me, what do you think is on it? And I said to her, I'm assuming it's gone above. And she goes, yes. We're at $750,000 and they're all 15 unconditional offers. Not a single person had even viewed the property or seen a walkthrough video of the property, and there was already 15 unconditional offers on the property. So that's what's starting to happen in Geelong. I mean, there's offers going everywhere. There's price guys getting smashed. So this is a general thing that's going on in Geelong. So it's definitely jumped it. That's what's changed in Geelong. Now, if you look at Newcastle even, I've got Newcastle just breaking the 6 o'clock mark. This has largely been led by a few, should I say, parts of the city, particularly Ward 1 and Ward 2 in Newcastle. So that's the inner city and west, and your inner city and beaches locations. I'll give you a good example. I mean, I was having clients last year I had two buying a particular street of Mayfield, one of the best, I call it the second best street of all of Mayfield. And they were picking them up for like under 900 grand, like 850 to 900 grand to give you an idea. And one sold that I'd argue was probably worse than it in terms of location. Maybe similar, maybe slightly better in the interior, but not much. Sold for more than 200,000 more than it. Then a week later, one sold for more than 300,000 more than it. So there's parts of the Newcastle that are definitely breaking that trend. They're probably even more into between the 6 and 7, but the general market definitely is by the 6 now. It's turned quite a bit, and there's more people coming back into the market. So that's where we're at. Look, to go into the Central Coast, I did previously say it was kind of close to the 5. It's probably between the 5 and 6 now. There are some that would be at the 6, no doubt, and those are the locations I've been mentioning, and they always pick up better because people know that. So the ones near the key corridors of the future and the key corridors now, so lifestyle and employment locations particularly, and transport, should I say, too. Those locations are done well, but the general market is, especially because of that, should I say, 5% deposit scheme, it has moved quite a bit. So that's kind of what's going on with the, should I say, Central Coast at the moment. I mean, there should be no surprises about that. But anyway, that's where we are. Probably getting close to the 6 o'clock mark. Look, to give you an idea, Wollongong has definitely moved as well. It's no longer in its sort of early stabilisation phase. It's definitely moving towards the latter parts of the stabilisation phase. Particularly towards the south and Shell Harbour are going pretty well, and it's because of the affordability in the area and still quite a good lifestyle. But should I say, middle and should I say blue chip suburbs are starting to turn as well. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, they're definitely not booming, but they're definitely not going down. So they're doing fairly well. Good stock is still selling. So that's my overview basically for the, should I say, primary cities, the main ones I buy in terms of the property clock for the October, should I say, quarter, or July to September quarter, if you want to call it that. So that's where they're all kind of at the moment. Let's get into all cities in July. So this is where they're all kind of at, and I'm including the other cities. So that's Hobart, the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and Adelaide. So you can see Hobart there was very much so at the beginning of its stabilisation phase, no doubt. Gold Coast and Sunny Coast were getting quite frothy towards the, should I say, winner's curse phase, and Adelaide was well within the winner's curse phase of the market. Now, let's just get into where they are today. I'll start with Hobart. Hobart's definitely still in the, I'd say, early to mid parts of its stabilisation phase. It has obviously moved along a little bit. There are parts selling reasonably well. There are other parts that are just pretty stable. So, I mean, for the majority of the market, it's still definitely early in it. I mean, it's past its downturn by probably six to 8 months now. So, that's where Hobart's really at. But if we get into, especially, I want to go back into both the Gold Coast and Sunny Coast. I'd say the Sunny Coast is in its winner's curse phase now. Again, like a lot of the other markets, I do expect it to do well for probably still the next 12 months or so, especially because of the schemes coming in. But I mean, the reason why the Gold Coast still, I've got a little bit more to go in the Gold Coast is simply because where the Gold Coast is at, it does have a little bit better demographics than the Sunny Coast, and also it has actually a little bit more limited supply in the key suburbs, particularly along the Gold Coast Highway and the beaches there, than the Sunny Coast. Sunshine Coast has quite a bit of supply coming in, particularly Caloundra West, and even if you go up towards Coolum and different areas, Perigian and all those sorts of areas as well. I mean, they've got a lot of stock still to come to market. So that's the reason why it's a little bit behind. Adelaide, I don't think anyone should be surprised about this. Adelaide's done like 120% growth, almost 110 to 120 in the last pretty much 5 or so years, maybe 5 to 6 years. I think Adelaide is absolutely pretty much almost at the absolute peak of the market. It can do 6 to 12 months more of growth. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it can't, but I mean, I'm pretty worried about it for a buyer buying in Adelaide because it is a market as well, similar to Perth, that can have stabilisation phases for a long period of time. So, as I said to everyone, it's not an area I'd be wanting to buy in. It is quite frothy and risky at the moment. So I'd be avoiding Adelaide at all costs, to be honest. But look, that's my overview basically of the property clock in, should I say, the market at the moment. That is our October property clock update. Look, I hope everyone has enjoyed this episode. And look, if you're someone who's really serious about getting into the market, particularly the best markets in the country, and you're looking for a buyer's agent who will take better care of you than anyone, I strongly suggest you reach out to me via www.compoundinvest.com.au/inquire. Look, what happens here is you book a time with me and you get to book a time slot in. It goes straight into your calendar. And from there, basically what happens is I give you a phone call and we basically from there have a 30-minute phone call regarding you telling me what you're looking to achieve or do. I'll then generally give you some options, and then we formulate a strategy from there. And now if you're a bit sitting on the fence right now, you got your reservations about buyer's agents, or you're looking 3 to 6 months time, I still suggest you reach out because you'll understand straight away that I care better for my people than anyone. I mean, I'll tell you everything that buyer's agents do as well, like the dodgy crap they do, selling off the plan properties and getting kickbacks from developers and all that crap. But the biggest thing is more so the strategy. It's if you have the wrong strategy, the purchase is going to be wrong in the first place. You need to get the strategy right before you even buy to be transparent with everyone. So that's really important. So if that's you, www.compoundinvest.com.au/inquire. I look forward to hearing from everyone and thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.